fireworks? What is that?
They look like some fireworks or something.
Aliens? I don't know.
What the heck
Where
is
that? You see it, right?
I'm actually, yes,
Okay.
I do see it.
Okay.
It's getting weirder by the second.
I know.
It's like they're sticking around.
We're gonna do some
Anybody?
digging and figure out what that is. Back in a moment.
Are we rolling on that?
What do you think that was?
Staff asked me to go ahead and I will do it to enter into the congressional record this 12-page document that Michael Shellenberger brought today that describes the Immaculate Constellation government program. So we will do that now. Every member up here has a copy of it. The first section talks about the unacknowledged special access program called Immaculate Constellation, and the second section about USG imagery intelligence. And Representative Luna just told me if I say Immaculate Constellation, I'll be on some list. Maybe a FISA warrant, so come at me, bro, I guess.
So this line will be forever in the record of this, some people say, historic Congressional UFO hearing. Greetings and welcome to Ancient Library, Urgent Ufology 2, Tome 22. The Congressional UFO UAP hearing and Immaculate Constellation. So before we start with the actual video, I'm going to give you a quick overview on the structure, or red thread, of the program you are watching right now. So we will start with a quick recap of the first UAP hearing involving whistleblowers, which took place in July 2023, proceeding to dissect the second hearing, which happened very recently in a more intense manner, taking a closer look on each of the so-called witnesses and their respective opening statements, followed by a section covering the core takeaways of the hearing and the more quality questions which had been asked by Congress members. The Immaculate Constellation is the next thing I'm going to break down, since it was a substantial part of the second UAP hearing, and if this unacknowledged special access program will be determined genuine, as the 12-page document which was presented by Michael Shellenberger, one could argue that humanity has done a huge step towards disclosure. Proceeding to close out the video with a quick synopsis on the current developments in the UFO field and the often mentioned disclosure process regarding UFO and UAP secrecy. So before we start with the recent UAP hearing with 4 witnesses, I'm going to give a quick recap on the UAP hearing in 2023 with David Grush, David Fravor and Ryan Graves. So last year this hearing was a great thing. There were events which happened in the Congress before that time connected to UFOs and UAP, but without much going on and no witnesses and or so-called whistleblowers involved. The 3 people who were giving testimony under oath at that hearing were David Grush, ex-Air Force, NRO and Space Force, and plenty of more things, who was we can say, the main protagonist coming out with the bombshell claims of secret special access programs conducting UFO crash retrievals since decades, and the existence of NHI bodies and craft in possession of contractor groups associated with the US deep state. His information is all second-hand, but he seemed to be a very credible guy, basically sacrificing his career to get this information out. Then we got David Fravor, ex-Navy, elite pilot, Top Gun level, and squadron leader, which was giving testimony regarding the infamous Tic Tac UFO encounter with the USS Nimitz from 2004. A very famous UFO case, special because the main storyteller witness is an elite pilot who got zero reason to taint himself and his career with spaced out UFO stuff. But there's always the possibility, even if it's quite unlikely, that Fravor and Grush are doing this in a scale of a counter-intel operation before they really retire. But I'll let you judge that for your own. Ryan Graves is a Navy pilot as well, of a lower rank than Fravor, but still a seemingly caring and professional individual when it comes to aerospace and pilots of any order. He never saw UFOs or UAPs with his own eyes, but was acknowledging weird anomalous radar activity and transmitted data about the cube in the sphere UAP sightings, which were allegedly observed by multiple pilots on multiple occasions. Grush was the newest revelation in this hearing. The other two guys were already present in the field for years, so his claims and statements were going somewhat viral, as well as the term NHI or non-human biologics, which came with collected craft via crash retrieval, special access programs, and more of that nature. I will link the Grush Fravor Graves hearing in the description for anyone interested. The Congressional UAP hearing in November 2024. So about a week ago, the next UAP hearing happened in US Congress, and this time with 4 so-called witnesses. I will name them here real quick, but we will run through every individual in a respective section, and I will break down their opening statements. The 4 people which gave their testimony under oath were Lou Elizondo, ex-intelligence, Tim Gallaudet, ex-Navy Admiral, Michael Shellenberger, an active independent journalist, and Michael Gold, an ex-NASA scientist. I will put this hearing in the description as well, but if you've not watched the whole thing, I will tell you how the structure and progression of this congressional event was going. So at the start, the leading Congress member, Nancy Mace, gave an interim or opening speech to the hearing, followed by some secondary shorter opening statements by 2 more Congress members. The 4 witnesses are now conducting the under oath ceremony, followed by the respective opening statements of about 5 minutes each. After that, the real conversation began, when Congress members are asking multiple questions to the witnesses. Most of them remain unanswered because of classified data which can't be exchanged in a public setting. The whole thing got a duration of a little more than 2 hours, and now I'm going to show you a clip from the opening statement of the hearing.
The reality is, despite their enormous taxpayer-funded budgets, the transparency of the Defense Department and the intelligence community have long been abysmal. The Pentagon has failed 6 consecutive audits. In fact, it's never actually passed one. Adding to this is a runaway overclassification of documents and materials, a reluctance to declassify materials when appropriate, and at times an outright refusal to share critical information with Congress. In short, it's not a track record that instills trust. So Congress has tried in recent years to lift the veil and find out if information about UAPs is being withheld, not only from the American public, but also from their elected representatives in Congress. Part of the transparency effort was legislation created in the Pentagon, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, but the new office is struggling to get its footing. A recent statutorily required report from AARO, intended to illuminate the government's historic assessment of UAPs, was heavily criticized by those seeking UAP transparency. The report has stoked suspicions AARO is unable, or perhaps unwilling, to bring forward the truth about the government's activities concerning UAPs. I'm disturbed that AARO itself lacks transparency. Even its budget is kept from the public. So if there is no there, then why are we spending money on it, and by how much? Why the secrecy if it's really no big deal and there's nothing there? Why hide it from the American people? Because I'm not a mathematician, but I can tell you that doesn't add up. I expect some of our witnesses to share their views on that AARO report. We will also hear from the witnesses today allegations of UAP-related misinformation and disinformation by government officials, of which they are personally aware and directly experienced. And we will hear testimony today concerning recent revelations about a purportedly secret UAP program whose existence and findings may have been improperly withheld from Congress.
So before we go deeper on the testimony and core contents of the hearing, I want to mention a couple of people which were also present in EFA congressional activity, like Tim Burchett, Jared Moskowitz, Clay Higgins, Glenn Groffman, Maxwell Frost, Anna Paulina Luna, and a few more in the crowd, like Jesse Michaels, Jeremy Corbell, and James Fox, etc. So a lot of active UFO researchers and content creators / filmmakers were also present, but this is just a side note here, so you can get a feeling how the atmosphere was in the room. But let's continue with the first witness and his opening statement, retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, ex-Navy.
Confirmation that UAPs are real came to me in January of 2015 when I was serving as the commander of the Navy Meteorology and Oceanography Command. At the time, my personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast. It included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group, and this exercise was overseen by the United States Fleet Forces Command, led by a 4-star admiral who at the time was also my superior officer. During this exercise, I received an email on Navy's secure network from the operations officer of U.S. Fleet Forces Command. The email was addressed to all the subordinate commanders, and the subject line read in all capital letters, "Urgent Safety of Flight Issue." The text of the email was brief but alarming, with words to the effect, "If any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We are having multiple near mid-air collisions, and if we do not resolve this soon, we are going to have to shut down the exercise." Attached to the email is what is now known as the Go Fast video, captured on the forward-looking infrared sensor of one of the Navy F-A-18 aircraft participating in the exercise. The now declassified video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implication of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects. Because the DoD policy is to rigorously deconflict such demonstrations with live exercises, I was confident this was not the case. The very next day, that email disappeared from my account and those of the other recipients without explanation. Moreover, the commander of Fleet Forces Command and the operations officer never discussed the subject. Even during weekly meetings specifically designed to address issues affecting exercises like the one in which the Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group was participating. This lack of follow-up was very concerning to me. As the Navy's chief meteorologist at the time, I was responsible for reducing safety of flight risks. Yet it appeared to me that no one at the flag officer level was addressing the safety risk posed by UAPs. Instead, pilots were left to mitigate these threats on their own without guidance or support. I concluded that the UAP information must have been classified within a special access program managed by an intelligence agency. That is a compartmented program that even senior officials, including myself, were not read into. Last year's UAP hearing before this Oversight Committee confirmed that UAP-related information is being withheld from senior officials and members of Congress. And just this week, I learned from former DoD official Chris Mellon that satellite imagery of UAP from a few years ago still has not been shared with Congress. Equally concerning, last year's UAP hearing also revealed that elements of the government are engaged in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Having never signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding UAPs, and now as a private citizen, I've become an advocate for greater UAP transparency from the government. The continued overclassification surrounding UAPs has not only hindered our ability to effectively address these phenomena, but has also eroded trust in our institutions. While I applaud previous bipartisan legislation passed by Congress concerning UAPs, a more comprehensive approach is needed to address the broader implication of UAP on public safety and national security, as well as the socioeconomic opportunities that open UAP research could unlock. Therefore, I recommend Congress take the following action, which I believe will receive bipartisan support. First, establish robust oversight of the executive branch's management of UAP information by directing key officials, beginning with the director of the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, to provide comprehensive briefings on what the government knows about UAP and does not know. Two, enact the provisions of the UAP Disclosure Act that establish a UAP Records Review Board to ensure independent oversight, transparency, and accountability in the government's handling of UAP information. And three, strengthen the UAP Disclosure Act and future reauthorizations with provisions that mandate a whole-of-government approach to addressing UAP. In closing, I will share my personal reasons for speaking out on this topic. First, as a former science agency leader, having led the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I've always sought the truth in human knowledge and thought. Now that we know UAP are interacting with humanity, and these include unidentified submerged objects in the ocean, we should not turn a blind eye, but instead boldly face this new reality and learn from it. Additionally, at a time when leaders in government leave much to be desired, I feel obligated to show moral leadership on this issue of UAP disclosure by validating the credibility of the courageous men and women who have come out as witnesses and whistleblowers to expose the truth. My speaking out has encouraged others to do the same, and it's my hope over time that a number of your constituents will want to know the truth and about UAP, and this number will increase to such an extent that the congressional action I have just recommended will become inevitable.
So he is talking about his email incident and the attached Go Fast video which disappeared from his computer. Funny enough, this is one of the same videos which was allegedly debunked a few days later on the Senate Arrow hearing, which was pretty weak stuff to be honest. He's mentioning USOs and reflecting a straightforward stance in regards to disclosure and declassifying UAP data and let the public know, as he is retired and no longer on active duty. Not really new stuff, but keep in mind, he is giving those statements under oath, so at least he must have a certain level of confidence in the things he's presenting in the hearing. He seems to have a little rough start, but in my opinion you can see the confidence in his words pushing him and somewhat enhancing his speech as he goes on. Additionally, he wrote a white paper in connection to the Seoul Foundation in which it is described that US naval forces observe a UAP, UFO or USO underwater on the seafloor, and the peculiar things are first, that there were alleged humanoid ET-esque beings which seem to do somewhat what we call repairings. And the second thing, and most important, is the alleged classified video which is showing all of these things. So pretty wild stuff. Nevertheless, this incident wasn't mentioned by Gallaudet in the hearing under oath, which could have many reasons. But on to the second witness, Elizondo.
It is my honor and privilege to testify before you on the issue of unidentified anomalous phenomenon, formerly known as UFOs. On behalf of our brave men and women in uniform and across the intelligence community, as well as my fellow Americans who have awaited this day, thank you for your leadership on this important matter. Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. For many years, I was entrusted with protecting some of our nation's most sensitive programs. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. As such, I appreciate the need to protect certain sensitive intelligence and military information. I consider my oath to protect secrets as sacred, and I will always put the safety of the American people first. With that said, I also understand the consequences of excessive secrecy and stovepiping. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the aftermath of 9/11, which many of us remember all too well. I believe that America's greatness depends on three elements. A watchful Congress, B, a responsive executive branch, and C, an informed public. Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAP programs were and are operating without any of these elements. Although much of my government work on the UAP subject still remains classified, excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. A small cadre within our own government involved in the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I've personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues. This includes unwarranted criminal investigations, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. Most Americans would be shocked to learn that the Pentagon's very own Public Affairs Office openly employs a professional psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for any UAP-related inquiries from citizens and the media. This is unacceptable. Many of my former colleagues and I have provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the Intelligence Community Inspector General, and many of us have subsequently been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives. This is not hyperbole, but a genuine fact, and this is wrong. To fix these problems, I propose three principal actions. First, Congress and the President should create a single point of contact responsible for a whole-of-government approach to the UAP issue. Currently, the White House, CIA, NASA, the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and others play a role, but no one seems to be in charge, leading to unchecked power and corruption. Second, we need a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust at a time when the public's trust is at an all-time low. This strategy should include a whole-of-government approach, including the academic and scientific communities, the private sector, and our international partners and allies. Third, Congress should create a protected environment so whistleblowers desperate to do the right thing can come forward without fear. As it currently stands, these whistleblowers suffer because of stigma, a code of silence, and concerns about retaliation. These whistleblowers should be encouraged to come forward in ways that protect them against any forms of retaliation. policies and procedures should ensure that protection, and for those who refuse to cooperate, it is up to the members of this committee and the other lawmakers to wield their subpoena power against hostile witnesses and prevent additional government funding to those UAP efforts that remain hidden from congressional oversight. In closing, we as Americans have never been afraid of a challenge. In fact, we thrive on them, whether it's eradicating polio or going to the moon. We don't run from a challenge, we take it head on. To the incoming administration and Congress, I say to you, we need immediate public transparency, and this hearing is an important step on that journey. If we approach the UAP topic in the same way as we, as Americans, have met other challenges, we can restore our faith in our government institutions. Together, we can usher in a new era of accountable government and scientific discovery. I believe that we as Americans can handle the truth, and I also believe the world deserves the truth.
So Louis Elizondo, a guy which I would consider myself very skeptic of, got in my opinion the best or most delivering opening speech from the four witnesses. His energy and demeanor seemed pretty concerned and almost emotional as he proceeds to make straightforward claims in mentioning excessive secrecy, illegal compartmentalized UAP programs, and putting himself in a bit of a victim role as one of the first whistleblowers without really telling secrets. You see where I'm coming from, but still I'm trying to remain kinda neutral on the guy. Later in the hearing, or closely to the end of it, he's getting a little cooked by Nancy Mace as she proceeds to ask solid questions, and it feels almost like Lou wants to say more. What he does kinda, while quasi-confirming the existence of crash retrieval programs on which he claims to have signed a classified NDA on. I want to expand on one thing here quick, which is the feeling that Lou wants to say more is a thing I often read about him. So considering his education as a counterintelligence specialist, we have to consider that he's maybe playing a role for years as he solidifies his character years later in this hearing, speaking of the starting point of his UFO UAP related career as an author and often labeled also a whistleblower in 2017. So he's either an honorable guy who wants disclosure or a tool to steer the UFO narrative. We have to remind ourselves, getting truths from the same entity which overlays everything with classification and secrecy just doesn't feel right. But for now, let's move to the next witness, the journalist Michael Shellenberger.
One of Congress's most important responsibilities is oversight of the executive branch in general and the military and intelligence community in particular. Unfortunately, there is a growing body of evidence that the U.S. government is not being transparent about what it knows about unidentified anomalous phenomena, and that elements within the military and the IC are in violation of their constitutional duty to notify Congress of their operations. President-elect Donald Trump and former President Barack Obama have both said that the government has information about UAPs that it has not released. There are other explanations for UAPs than that they represent a new form of life or non-human life. Current dominant alternative theories, including those put forward by Arrow, are that UAPs are some kind of natural phenomena we don't yet understand, like ball lightning or plasma. They could also be part of some new U.S. or foreign government weapons programs, such as drones, aircraft, balloons, CGI, hoaxes, or birds. Whatever UAPs are, Congress must be informed, as must the people of the United States. We have a right to know what UAPs are, no matter what they are. However, we now have existing and former U.S. government officials who have told Congress that Arrow and the Pentagon have broken the law by not revealing a significant body of information about UAPs, including military intelligence databases that have evidence of their existence as physical craft. One of those individuals is a current or former U.S. government official acting as a UAP whistleblower. This person has written a report. This is the report that says the executive branch has been managing UAP, NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. Furthermore, these individuals have revealed the name of an active and highly secretive DoD unacknowledged special access program, or USAP. The source of that document told me, that the USAP is a strategic intelligence program that is part of the U.S. military family of long-standing, highly sensitive programs dealing with various aspects of the UAP problem. The new UAP whistleblower claims that the U.S. military and IC database includes videos and images taken using infrared, forward-looking infrared, full-motion video, and still photography. The report that was just shared with Congress says Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent USAP that consolidates observations of UAPs by both tasked and untasked collection platforms. Immaculate Constellation includes high-quality imagery intelligence and measurement and signature intelligence of UAPs, the whistleblower's report adds. The sources of this intelligence are a blend of directed and incidental collection capabilities, positioned in low Earth orbit, the upper atmosphere, as well as military and civilian aviation altitudes and maritime environments. The report to Congress details in detail various UAPs, including spheres, orbs, disks, saucers, ovals, triangles, boomerang, arrowhead, and irregular organic. The report describes various incidents found in the human intelligence databases. One involved orbs surrounding and forcing an F-22 out of its patrol area. In another incident, the crew of a Navy aircraft carrier watched a small orange-red sphere rapidly descend from a high altitude of 100 to 200 yards directly above the flight deck of the CVN, or aircraft carrier. And since my reporting on this Immaculate Constellation last month, another source came forward who told me that they saw a roughly 13-minute-long, high-definition, full-color video of a white orb UAP coming out of the ocean approximately 20 miles off the coast of Kuwait. It was filmed from a helicopter. Then halfway through the video, the person said the orb is joined by another orb that briefly comes into the frame from the left before rapidly moving again out of the frame. The person discovered the video on SIPR, the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network, which the DoD uses to transmit classified information. A leading UAP researcher who utilizes the Freedom of Information Act to find out what the government knows, John Greenwald, told me last year that the U.S. government had been increasingly denying his requests for UAP information. He has been doing FOIA requests for 27 years and has an archive of 3 million pages. The government has for decades denied any interest in UFOs, he told me, but the documents that he has assembled show that behind the scenes it was a completely different story. Contrary to the hopes of many advocates of transparency, the government has been restricting more information since the leak of 3 UAP videos in 2017. The DoD organization AARO has been labeling many documents with a B7 exemption, which Greenwald says does not make any sense. They're stating that anything AARO does is involved in law enforcement investigation, which allows AARO to not release it. Greenwald says that the DoD has denied the existence of a UAP and ATIP-related records on multiple occasions, only to acknowledge them after an appeal was filed. He added that the Naval Air Systems Command in March 2022 stated they found no additional UAP videos. It seems strange that they had 3 and only those 3, but other requests had been filed by the Black Vault, that's John Greenwald's group, to seek out more places UAPs might be hiding. Then in September 2022, the Navy admitted that the UAP-related videos and photographs existed, but denied the request in full for their release, saying that the requested videos contain sensitive information that are classified and exempt from disclosure. The DoD will deny things on a Monday and then admit to it on a Friday, said Greenwald. He said the government can and does release videos that protect secret methods of capturing it. They fall back on the sensitive platform excuse a lot, he said. However, the on-screen information can be blurred and scrubbed. The metadata can be removed. I'll show you this example here. This is a presentation from the UATP task force. This is completely absurd. It's nuts, this level of censorship, of redaction on a document. It shows the redaction of how many reports they've collected, for how many years. 2 of the 3 potential explanations are blacked out. The Pentagon, the intelligence community is treating us like children. It's time for us to know the truth about this. I think that we can handle it. Thank you very much.
Michael Shellenberger, the independent journalist, who is active in the UAP area for quite some time, and especially in this recent hearing, he seemed to be the driving force combined with Gallaudet and Elizondo to get information on the public record in this congressional setting. He's pointing out the overclassification and way too high secrecy regarding UFO and UAP incidents and cases, and also highlights John Greenwald's work, who is mostly known for his immense database called the Black Vault, and his outstanding efforts to file FOIA reports for many years, not only but mostly in the UFO field. His main point was the unacknowledged Special Access Program Immaculate Constellation, which he presented to Congress in the form of a 12-page document, which we will cover later in the video as well. So of course his current value is mostly determined by the veracity of the document and truthful existence of Immaculate Constellation. If genuine, he will be known as a very valuable and respectful figure in the UAP space, and of course there is still the possibility that he got disinfoed by a counter-intel operation with a goal to discredit soldiers who are fighting for truth in the ufology space, and in this case to harm his reputation as an independent journalist. But on to the next witness, the ex-NASA rep Michael Gold.
Courage is what it takes to tackle this topic, and courage in the face of adversity is what I see in front of me, beside me, and behind me. Per my introduction, I am currently the Chief Growth Officer at Redwire Space and have had several leadership positions at NASA. That being said, I want to be clear that I am speaking exclusively on my own behalf and not for Redwire, NASA, or any other organization. However, I am here today to speak out for science. Science requires data, which should be collected without bias or prejudice. Yet, whenever the topic of UAP arises, those who wish to explore the phenomena are often confronted with resistance and ridicule. For example, members of the NASA UAP independent study team, particularly those in academia, were mocked and even threatened for simply having the temerity to engage in the study of UAP. Our best tool for unlocking the mystery of UAP is science, but we cannot conduct a proper inquiry if the stigma is so overwhelming that just daring to be part of a NASA research team elicits such a vitriolic response. Therefore, one of the most important actions that can be taken relative to exposing the truth of UAP is to combat the stigma. And this is where I believe that NASA can be eminently helpful. The NASA brand is synonymous with hope, optimism, and credibility. If you were to take a walk down the National Mall, you would immediately see the NASA logo on t-shirts, hats, and bumper stickers. Few federal agencies enjoy this kind of popularity. I've never seen anyone wearing an Office of Personnel Management t-shirt, which is why NASA could play such an influential role. Specifically, NASA could, with relatively little cost and effort, host symposia on UAP, or even just participate in existing panels examining the topic. NASA personnel stepping forward and participating in such discussions would make a powerful statement to the scientific community that UAP should be taken seriously and researched accordingly. In regard to research, NASA has vast archives, much of which may contain important UAP data. Again, for relatively little cost and effort, NASA could create an AI or ML algorithm that could search the agency's archives for anomalous phenomena. I suspect that such an effort would not only result in information that will help us to understand UAP, but could result in data that will assist in other areas of scientific inquiry, such as anomalous weather or meteorite activity. Beyond its existing archives, NASA could act as a clearinghouse for civilian and commercial UAP data. During my work on the UAP independent study team, it quickly became evident that there is no clear or well-publicized process for civilian pilots to report UAP sightings. The stigma associated with UAP hampers the number of pilots that would report such phenomena, but even for those who overcome the stigma, I believe the current FAA guidance is largely unknown and poorly understood. In order to effectively collect UAP data, the independent study team recommended the use of NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System, or ASRS. This system, which is administered by NASA and funded by the FAA, provides a confidential means for the reporting of safety violations in a voluntary and non-punitive manner. Over 47 years, the ASRS has collected nearly 2 million reports. ASRS is the perfect tool to collect UAP data, which could then be collated by NASA and shared with the public at large. Leveraging ASRS could create a treasure trove of UAP data, potentially hundreds of thousands of reports, supporting this hearing's goal of exposing the truth. And I'm grateful to our two co-chairs and other members who have already incorporated this idea into proposed legislation. At this hearing, and as others have demonstrated, the UAP issue is justifiably dominated by national security and defense. However, I would urge the subcommittees to keep in mind the numerous ways that NASA and the FAA, as well as commercial activities in the air, in space, and in the water, can generate a massive amount of invaluable data on anomalous phenomena. I cannot help but be excited by the potential for such an endeavor, since scientific discovery is driven by anomalies. It's the existence and study of anomalies that led to the theory of relativity, quantum mechanics, and nearly all of humanity's scientific breakthroughs. This is why the study of UAPs should be embraced, since whatever is occurring, the chance to garner new knowledge should never be ignored. We must be thorough in collecting information, fearless in making conclusions, and open to following the data, no matter how mundane or extraordinary the results may be. I began this testimony by praising the Joint Subcommittee members for their courage, and I will end by echoing that sentiment. As the saying goes, the truth is out there. We just need to be bold enough and brave enough to face it.
So at first, I want to point out that this guy speaks like Brian Keating. Maybe it's just personal dissonance, but I think his way of speaking sounds very media-trained and artificial, which is partly reflected by his conflicting statements, especially that he doesn't rep NASA or any company. He reps science, but then he proceeds to ask for funding for UAP NASA projects and does this for 2 minutes straight. A good thing I want to point out in his speech is the mentioned stigmatization of UAP cases and witnesses and the repulsing effects for academics to do serious science on this stuff. Some people say NASA stays for never a straight answer, which is kinda accurate in this case. Also to mention, the guy has worked 13 years for Bigelow Aerospace. Bob Bigelow, ex-owner of the Skinwalker Ranch property and UFO truth seeker and billionaire. I put a little bit positive. So I think he could have brought more to the table in my opinion, to be honest. But we will take what we get. And now we move to the next section, which is called Takeaways from the recent UAP hearing. So at first I want to say it's all about expectations. Many people were disappointed because in their eyes it was so-called nothing burger, because most of them don't know how this congressional public setting under oath works. They want a guy who is credible and at the same time is sacrificing his rep and career to whistleblow. This is not going to happen in the setting. If at all, this will take place in a SCIF, and with high restrictions and with the following intention of a person to leak SCIF data and violate law. At the same time, we wouldn't know what's real or fake, pretty similar with the Immaculate Constellation, unacknowledged special access program situation. So for me personally, it was a tiny step in the right direction of building up a public record of these conversations. Maybe bring in other specialists and credible people with genuine insights in the UFO matter next time, and maybe make it a regular thing. I also admire some of the Congress members' effort and types of questions which had been asked. I got another clip ready of Representative Burbot asking some wild but important questions to bring the dialogue to another level and remove stigma.
But Mr. Shellenberger, I wanted to ask you, I think I understand from this hearing that you would agree that classifying information like this is not in the best interest of the people. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, with the caveat that, of course, I would support classification necessary to protect secrets essential to national security, but I think it's pretty obvious that there's overclassification.
Overclassification, yes. And so in most instances, if they can't tell us what, do you think at some point they'll at least tell us why?
President-elect Trump has repeatedly committed to greater transparency, both on the UAP issue, on JFK files, on COVID origins, and many other things. So I think that we need to make sure that the next administration is held accountable for that.
Agreed. And this is for all four of you. Yes or no, please. I have many questions I want to get to. Are there any known instances of recovered materials or technologies that are not of human origin and maybe connected to any advanced bioscience defense programs within the USG?
I don't know.
I wouldn't be able to answer that, ma'am.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, so there are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the Department of Defense involving the manipulation of human genetics with what is described as non-human genetic material, potentially for the enhancement of human capabilities, hybrids. Are any of you familiar with that? Yes or no?
No, ma'am.
I am not, ma'am.
I'm not.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I would like to know, with Immaculate Constellation, how does this relate to UAP activities, Mr. Schellenberg, in oceanic environments? Are there any instances where the Navy or other maritime forces have encountered UAPs that could not be explained by known technology or natural phenomena?
Yeah, the Immaculate Constellation covers both terrestrial and oceanic, and there's actually a number of cases described in the report that occur in the ocean.
And do you believe that there is a concerted effort by the Pentagon to keep Congress out of the loop regarding these UAP activities, specifically in our waters?
Yes.
I think it's about 5% of our ocean that's actually been studied in detail by man, and we've studied more of space than we had of our own oceans. And so are there any accounts of UAPs emerging from or submerging into our water which could indicate a base or presence beneath the ocean's surface?
I don't know about a base, but as I mentioned, I had a different source entirely describe this pretty extraordinary footage that exists of orbs, of an orb coming out of the ocean and being met by another orb.
So she's talking about underwater bases and hybrid experiments with NHI, alien genetic material to enhance human capabilities. So this is some wild stuff to hear in a congressional hearing. So regardless of the not valuable answers from the witnesses, I think this is an anti-stigmatizing stance in regards to ufology. Of course, I'm pretty sure Ms. Burbot was not expecting any good answers, but hats off to her even speaking about these things. I'm sure John E. Mack, the Harvard doctor who investigated abduction cases, would have had an answer to at least one of her questions. May he rest in peace. In the end of the day, my opinion is that these hearings are small steps to get the topic in more serious circles and more accepted, and even if it's the basic point of view that it's very unlikely that we are the only intelligent species in the universe. Every other thing can only be considered human hubris. But let's go a little deeper on the Immaculate Constellation program released by Michael Shellenberger. So this fancy name is allegedly standing for an US Unacknowledged Special Access Program created to monitor and analyze UAP and UFO data. It was presented by Michael Shellenberger in form of a document with 12 pages. I will put them all on the screen while proceeding to give you a quick breakdown on the data. I will also link a 40-minute breakdown by Richard Dolan for people who want to get his perspective on the program. In the document, different types of craft are getting listed with their respective percentage of appearances. So triangles, orbs, disks, and all these ratios are way different than in the public UFO reports from the past. For example, the Arrow report. There are many listings of UAP encounters with military or government employees and their respective reports. So I highly recommend to read the whole thing. It's just 12 pages. So even if reading slow, it's not a huge time investment. And if this document and the connected unacknowledged special access program will be determined genuine, then this is a huge bombshell for the public and the field of ufology. There's also stuff in there talking about keeping UAP data away from the public and especially Congress. This combined with the alleged backdoor threats reported by Congress members seem to match very good, doesn't it? We have also to consider that the author of this document is anonymous, and the only thing Michael Shellenberger was quasi-admitting that he or she is connected to the matter via government entity like DoD or a sub-government contractor. So in my opinion, we should take this in, but at the same time be aware of all kinds of tricks the intelligence sector might have up its sleeves. Let's move to the final section of the program. Disclosure Showdown, ? So last year, at about the same time, I've done the first urgent ufology program, and in this video I was going over all kinds of happenings in the UFO field happening at that time. From the Miami aliens over the Peru incident and the Mexican alien bodies. So these things are quite old lore today, and we are only a year later on the clock. I mean, the veracity for most of these cases remains undiscovered. But what I want to say with this is that the sheer rate in which we get confronted with all types of wooey alien stuff is seemingly going up. My take on why that is the effort to steer disclosure and plan certain events to confuse the public and to conduct a desensitization in regards to UFOs. In other words, if people read wild alien headlines day in, day out, they are not taking it really serious. And at the same time, they're giving critics and skeptics more ammunition to debunk the whole field. But back to the hearing and the impact of, if real, the Immaculate Constellation, let's call it a leak. So the contents of the hearing in general were of a solid quality. I mean, what we can compare it to. I'm somewhat impressed with the open questions some people asked and not surprised with the answers. But this was the second time they have come together in this type of setting. So I'm hoping for a bigger step and quality witnesses for the next time. Anyways, in terms of real disclosure, we should not put all of our hopes in government processes, which are basically controlled by the same entity, which is controlling all the secret UFO stuff. I mean, compartmentalization, yes, but there's no way to know if some specific people maybe are informed about the bigger picture, and maybe one day in the near future, one of these figures will value the freedom of information over their careers or lives, to possibly make this planet a better and more informed place. To wrap up this program, I got a clip from Michael Shellenberger dropping some high quality output. And please tell me what you think about the video and tell me your thoughts on the matter. All the best, LIBRA.
I do not have a hard time believing that the U.S. government is capable of carrying out and keeping secret covert operations.
And you brought up a couple of very interesting names on Joe Rogan that were involved in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story that are also involved in the UFO story.
Yes.
Care to talk about that?
Well, I mean, the big name is a gentleman named Garrett Graff. He's he was involved in pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop in the summer of 2020 with the Aspen Institute, along with his supervisor, Vivian Schiller, who was the head of NPR, the head of media at Twitter, New York Times executive. Credible career as a high-level media executive. Now they're at Aspen. And Garrett Graff comes out with a book on UFOs earlier this year called UFO, and it's basically just a debunking of all these cases. You know, I mean, I haven't gone through it. I mean, you really need to go through each and every one of them. But one of the things you discover is when you get into some of these alleged debunkings is that they haven't actually debunked it. They'll often come up with something. Well, I think one really salient one is there's been this argument between Mark von, I'm going to sit by my butcher's last name, Remensdorf?
Remensdorf, yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
I think so.
I'm going
to say,
Sorry, Mark.
Mark's awesome.
Yeah, Mark has been having this argument around the gimbal UFO video with a gentleman named Mick West.
Yes.
I think Mark has kind of won the argument that it's not lens glare or some sort of optical illusion. It's really, and I think X, formerly Twitter, has been important to being able to do that kind of, to be able to see, you can kind of like, you don't have to follow the whole thing, but you kind of see that Mick West runs out of responses. And Mark is very persistent. So, I mean, each of these cases, you know, the first thing people do, I mean, they did this with Hunter Biden laptop. They go, oh, no, it's been debunked. Or they did it with COVID origins. That's been debunked. And, you know, 95% of journalists and others go, oh, it's been debunked. I'm going to move on. They don't even look at it to kind of go, wait a second. It really wasn't debunked. You just said some words, you know, and you didn't actually prove it. I think there's a lot of that going on when it comes to UAPs. And it just requires... You know, it's part of the problem with the issue being marginalized, but you would normally have academics or others that had budgets and they were staff time and PhDs and whatever's in peer-reviewed journals that would kind of go through this in some way. I mean, it's not to say that peer-reviewed journals don't have a lot of misinformation or corrected information, but you'd at least have that sort of debate. But as it is now, it's sort of left to non-professionals. I mean, there's really everybody's non-professional. But yeah, I found it, I guess the bottom line is, isn't that a funny coincidence? The guy that was involved in a Hunter Biden disinformation operation was also involved in a UAP information operation. Whether it's all disinformation, I haven't evaluated, but I find him a suspicious character.
No, and that book makes UFOs out to be some like novel curiosity that, you know, if you're a member of the real intelligentsia, you should laugh at.